firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behaviors so you won't click. No complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good, the best defense is in your mind today.
Welcome to Phishing for Answers. The opinions expressed here are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views of their employers. Get ready, because the next live episode of Phishing for Answers is starting right now with your host, Joshua Krumbaugh, the CEO of Fish Firewall.
Psychology is the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behavior so you won't click.
All right. Thank you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today we're here with Ann Dunkin, the former CIO of the Department of Energy. Ann, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, Joshua. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, Ann Dunkin, I was the CIO of the Department of Energy until 12:01 p.m. on the 20th. Now on my own, doing some. I've got a number of things in the works, an academic appointment coming up, some boards that I'll be joining, some advisory work, a book I'm going to write, things like that. So that's where I am now. Previously, I also served as the CIO for the Environmental Protection Agency in the Obama administration, been the CIO for the Palo Alto School District, Santa Clara County, and also worked for Hewlett Packard and Dell.
Wow. So you've got an impressive resume. So you said that you've now been fired by Donald Trump twice.
Technically, well, technically asked to resign by his predecessors, but he didn't invite me to stay. So left January 20th of 2017, and now January 20th, 2025, with the inauguration of the new president. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay.
I personally think we need more stability, particularly in roles like CIO, CISO, things like that within the federal space. But that's just me. So staying completely away from politics, thank you so much for joining me today. Really excited to interview you and just learn a little bit more about your perspectives. So with you being having been the CIO of the Department of Energy, and AI just being the massive global topic right now and really exploding, what is your opinion on how the energy sector is going to be impacted by AI over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, that is a really interesting question. I was in Davos last week, where that was like the topic du jour. Every conversation I had was about energy and sustainability and AI, all run together. And then, of course, we come back this week and DeepSeek appears, claim, and let's just say, I don't have the greatest confidence that the Chinese are always telling us the truth. But I also am familiar with another company that's on the same path. So I think that's kind of that potential there is there. So for those who don't know what DeepSeek is doing, they're using, I think it's 90% less processing power to do the same model training.
1/11th, actually.
1/11th. Okay.
Yes.
Even less to do the same model training. I don't know that they've made any claims about model use, but because obviously using models also uses a tremendous amount of energy. But anyway, regardless, I mean, those tools could, those advances in technology could disrupt what we expect, which is there's a lot of energy that's going to be used for AI. Now, the good news is AI, there's a couple of pieces of good news. Number one is we can use sustainable sources of energy, right? Much of that AI work can be done in places where clean energy is abundant, right? You put your data center in a cool climate where you don't have to cool your data center. You can put it somewhere like Greenland where there's lots of clean energy available. So there are solutions that will allow us to use clean energy. Secondly, AI is going to be a solution for the energy problems AI causes and other energy problems. So what I mean is AI is going to help us, and we see this. Let me back up a little bit and say what we've learned is all science is computational. So if I'm at DOE, for example, and I'm trying to develop a new battery material, I'm trying to develop fusion energy, I'm trying to develop new substrates for solar panels, whatever it might be. I'm going to do my first analysis on a computer. And the more powerful that computer is, the more powerful the algorithms I'm using, the faster I'm going to be able to move my science forward before I get to the part that I do on my bench. And whether my bench is the NIF, which is the big fusion reactor, or simply some physical analysis of material properties, I'm going to get there much better informed, much more capable, much more ready to do science fast. So AI combined with high performance computing, combined with quantum computing, are going to be the things that help us get to our sustainability goals. That's the only way we're going to get back to 1.5 C is by using all those technologies, all those clean energy technologies plus carbon sequestration to really pull carbon back out of the atmosphere. So, as with all new technologies, AI brings the both sides of the coin. In this case, it's the energy usage, but the ability to help us dramatically make the clean energy transition and reach our climate goals.
Yeah, and I mean, say we can do it for 1/10 of the energy. It's not like we're gonna end up using 1/10 of the energy. No, we'll do 10 times the output. We're going to make the AI that much smarter, give it that much larger of a context window, all of the things that that you can do when you have more energy. Did you see the Google Titans white paper that was recently published?
I have not seen the Google white paper.
So it's really interesting because so right now everyone's training these large language models the same way using the same transformers. And they built a new way to train the models, and it works much more like the human brain. And so you not only do you have regression training, but it can learn from its mistakes and get smarter as it goes.
Right.
So I'm really optimistic about that, and it has both long and short-term memory built into it.
Yeah,
So,
and that's absolutely key, right? Is that every time you have new data, if you have to train the model from scratch every time there's new data, that's a huge energy sink. It's a huge time sink. It's a huge processing sink. If that model can incrementally learn, right, that's huge.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that's really being able to learn from its mistakes and having memory are the two key things that are preventing AI from entering the workforce. Once those two issues are solved, and I've talked to a few people, that there's some major corporations that are big in this space that haven't really entered yet, that I expect to enter soon, that I am interested to see what they have. But beyond that, looking at what Google's doing, I would expect them to be the dominator very, very soon here. So
It'll be interesting to see, and how much disruption DeepSeek actually brings to the market too.
yeah, well, so far, but what, $400 billion worth of disruption or something?
Is that after the market bounced back, or is that before?
That was before. That was before. It's bounced back a little bit.
Yeah,
I
so
think the
it's
number's not quite that bad anymore.
It's maybe 300 billion now, but yeah, big numbers, right? That, I was watching I see this little stock ticker on the bottom of my computer, which I don't pay much attention to, but every once in a while I see it and I'm like, Nvidia down what? So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's funny is how reactive the market is. It shows they don't truly understand how this is going to go, because
Right.
I don't care if you can train a model for 1/10. We're still going to use all the processing power that we can possibly get. So,
Right. And there's a massive shortage of GPUs. So the idea that backlog is suddenly going to vanish, it's unlikely. However, I think, it gave the market an opportunity to rethink what's really going on. And I think that's fair. Let them, I think the market can always be served by thinking a little, because it reacts a lot. And then clearly that reacted a lot, but then
Oh,
hopefully they
oh
thought
yeah,
about it. Yeah.
it
So
did.
yeah.
But I mean, regardless, anytime, I mean, anytime there's a major shift and it's happening daily, you're gonna see some bit of reaction.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, everyone's trying to win in this race. Yeah, I don't know whether or not DeepSeek actually can do it for what they claim,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, given their constraints and their lack of access to the GPUs that we have, if they really want to compete, they almost have to get creative and figure that out.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Absolutely, they
um,
do.
I will say I do hope that some companies in the US will soon figure that out as well, and bring us that level of reasoning at that price because I'll tell you what, owning a software company and having worked with the government, we need a US company that we can do that with. So, but it's
Well,
open
and
source, which is
yeah, I was talking to one today that appears to be on that track. So hopefully there'll be news coming out soon, hopefully, from those folks.
well, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I've had a few conversations with some people. I don't know if it's probably not the same.
Yeah.
But regardless, yeah, it's an interesting industry. So AI is reshaping everything. How do you think it's going to change things the most over the course of the next 3 years?
Wow, it's a really interesting question, because I think we saw a huge seismic shift where everybody started using AI to solve every problem. Not every problem, but every problem they thought they could solve with it. Whether it's gathering information, whether it's writing their term paper, and so I think I heard a Gartner analyst recently describe it as both at the peak and in the trough at the same time. They've got their peak of inflated expectations and their trough of disillusionment in their model. And so people are finding that the outputs they're seeing from AI models are not meeting their needs in some cases. In other cases, they're great. I actually think in the next 3 years, it's going to be the shift to agentic AI. Right? Large language models are interesting. We still have lots of problems with them hallucinating. I think people are going to shift. Serious users are going to do more shifting to small language models that are really specifically designed around their problems to feed
Mhm.
agents. And I really, to me, the holy grail is the day that I have my own personal agent, right? That is on my phone, that lives on my phone, because I got enough processing power on my phone for my agent to live on my phone. And I can say to my agent, hey, go evaluate fares to Atlanta for next Tuesday. Tell me, what the best fares are, and which flight I'm most likely to get an upgrade on, and come back and tell me. And then it comes back, and I go, oh, that sounds great. Now go ahead and book that flight, right? For it to actually, I think that's when, and that's not 3 years. I don't think that's going to happen. Although I don't know, because we get surprised.
Oh, it could be. I mean, I definitely, that's what I'm waiting for too, where it has access to your different accounts. It can go in, it can create a
Mhm.
meeting, send out the
Right,
invites, access whatever it happens to be, help you with
right.
paying bills if that's what you
But
want it
it's
to
your
do.
private model. It's
Um,
not, your data doesn't go anywhere else. It stays right there. It pulls information from the outside world, but it ultimately becomes yours. And obviously, your model then has to be super secure, because it's keys to the kingdom,
yeah,
right? It can do everything. So that's, speaking
yeah.
of phishing, right? That's a whole new set of security challenges. Of, I got a model that knows everything I do, and how do I make sure that model is
Hmm.
secured from misinformation, disinformation, and theft? So that's going to be an interesting frontier for us.
Oh, it's gonna be incredibly fascinating. I would say we're trending
Mhm.
in that direction. So I think we'll have the technology and the capabilities within
Mhm.
3 years. Whether or not it will actually be something that's mainstream by then, totally different story. But I definitely, I'm also excited
Yeah.
about that. And just like I think about how hectic my day-to-day life is and juggling things, and if I truly had an AI assistant that had access to all of my
Mhm.
key accounts, like the systems that I'm in all day, every day, could start correlating that data, presenting it to me, and just helping me out like a
Mhm.
normal assistant would, but with better access
Right.
to information and presumably
Mhm.
smarter, to where, that email that I need to write, there's a draft waiting on me, and all I have to do is
Right.
click
Right.
approve.
Yeah.
Um,
The amount of administrivia you do on your own, even if you've got support, is incredible. And to be able to have a model where you can just say, hey, please do this, that, and the other thing, and queue up that draft message, and pay my credit card bill, and whatever. It would be huge. It'd be a game changer for
yeah.
sure. So
Yeah, and I mean, I already see it being there because, like, I use O1, um, all day, every day, and I'll talk to it. I like the ability that to be able to talk to them and get it to do what I want, but I have to be the one driving. So I'm excited about the new agents. Supposedly they are releasing O3 Mini today. Now I heard that, but I haven't seen it yet, actually showing up anywhere. But that'll be
mhm.
exciting to see
Yeah.
as well. Um, so the opposite side of AI is the threat, and it's just massive. I mean, and there's so many different aspects to it. Uh, but what areas of AI in terms of a threat are you looking at and focused on the most?
so, so yeah, I mean, so we talked. Anything that's good is bad, right? There's great stuff that comes in bad.
Right?
So, I mean, I think AI from a threat standpoint, we look at, and obviously, I no longer have over 100,000 people to worry about. But what we saw was that phishing got so good, right? And really, just you could see the sea change when the AI tools came out for mainstream. When Chat GPT came out, um, immediately people's phishing emails got better. So the various social engineering avenues are really concerning, and the ability to create, a deep fake of someone's voice, and then tell that person, deep fake to, have call someone and tell them, their kid's been in an accident, or their grandparents are, need money, or what, or to pay a bill for the company.
Yeah.
Um, and the more training data they have, right, the better those are going to be. Not just your likeness or your voice, but information about you and what you would and wouldn't do. Right, those are going to get really really scary. I think in terms of our inability to know what reality is. And so I think that's a problem we have to solve before this goes too far down the road of how do we ensure that we have ability to recognize deep fakes and stop them. And that's not just, me being able to look and go, oh, well, the fingers are kind of funny. But to actually have tools and capabilities that will filter those things out and will identify what is real and what's computer generated, that can be essentially an interface between you and the electronic world. And I forget which author it was who was telling the story, but was saying, they recorded, I think, 20 minutes of their voice, and then they had a system read their novel, and it's a recorded book. Now like an author would normally record a book. She said it sounds just like her, but she only recorded.
Wow. And
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
thing.
She only recorded
Yeah.
20 minutes, and this bot recorded, 14 hours of this book. And I mean, huge time saver, right, for this author.
That
Great
wow.
experience for the readers who get to hear the author, but scary that, now if I were her, I'd be really scared about what people could do with all that, voice material. But then again, anybody who does a lot of recordings, just like you or me or anybody else, is at risk of that same problem.
It's out
So,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So my opinion is that the low tech stuff is going to
Yeah.
save us the most from that. The policy, the procedure, the out
Mhm.
of band
Mhm.
checks that we just bake into
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
process. I think to me that's going to be the
Mhm.
best way to
Mhm.
counter it. But it's not always at a higher level. Like, yes, often it's targeting your higher ups in finance that have the ability to move
Mhm.
stuff around. But I spoke with a CISO the other day, large uh, consumer company, and they had this massive call center, and they are daily getting deep fake
Mhm.
calls pretending to be other people, and good enough to actually pass
Right,
the voice
right.
recognition checks that they have. I talked to another one who said that they had deep fakes, video deep fakes of their CEO. This is a large bank in the United States, so it's not common, but it
Yeah.
is already happening. I'm sure you've seen it at the DOE.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen some stuff, and people who are getting. We've only had one. We only had one instance while I was there of one of our contractors actually getting taken for some money in one of these cases, because to your point, usually that low tech check, oh, is this in process? Did was this approved? Let me circle back with someone. Usually stops it, but we're definitely seeing some attempts that are quite good, at DOE for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't have no idea what you've seen there, but I know
Yeah,
what I've
yeah,
seen, and the sophistication has gone up. But to that point, I mean, it really changes the advice we
hmm
have to give
hmm
users. We used to tell users that typos were a red
yep,
flag. If anything, that's the
hmm
opposite now. Typos might indicate that it's actually a real
exactly,
human
yeah,
behind
yeah,
it, whereas that perfect grammar doesn't necessarily mean it's malicious. But those that I haven't seen any fish with typos unless it seemed to be on purpose in
hmm
quite a while.
yeah. I agree. They're like I said, when ChatGPT came in and they got really good because all of a sudden, these folks, it's not English isn't their first language. They've got another system that is helping them out with it,
Yeah.
and it's very good. Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Well, there's both 2 sides to every coin. I guess China just gave all of our, NSA and CIA people a tool that they can use that knows how to speak Chinese very well.
yes, that's right. The question is whether you
Um,
want to be useful, but that's another question entirely. But yeah, I mean to that,
I no, but I will say it gives the attacker the ability to localize no matter
yeah,
where they're at
yeah,
in the world. If I wanna target somebody in China, I use DeepSeek. If I wanna target
yeah,
somebody in the Middle East, I use
yeah, very
Falcon.
true.
So it is interesting how it's changed that, and it's taken this thing that, if I really wanted to sophisticatedly target somebody, I needed somebody that knew the area and somebody that knew the language really well. None of it's needed now, which means, just some really, savant that's really good with computers, that's terrible economics of the situation somewhere in the world could still cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, absolutely. It does change, and that's the thing. It democratized. Similar to if you go back and you think about when some of these bad guys started giving their not giving their tools away, but making their tools available to people who had no technical skills. Right. That same thing, except it's on steroids now. Now we've democratized the ability to attack, and so
Yeah.
we need to put those same capabilities in our defenses, as well, wherever we can, right?
Yeah.
And so using AI enabled tools
But
to defend and things like that are going to be huge.
so to that, a lot of enterprises are still trying to figure out what their AI
Mhm.
strategy is actually going to be. And many are taking a sort of wait and see
Mhm.
approach. What's your advice to, just the average US corporation out there that is trying to decide what to do with AI, how to deploy it? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I know it's a
Yeah.
massive question. There's no one answer, but
Yeah.
it just if you had any general advice to somebody that is
Right.
just getting started on that AI path, what is
Well, I
it?
mean, I think the biggest thing is, you don't want to get left behind, right? So for people to say, I'm going to wait and see, is a bad choice. What we've seen is the technology adoption curves, continue to accelerate, and AI is no exception to that. The adoption of AI has been huge, been really fast. And if companies don't adopt it, they're going to get left behind. And there are definitely productivity gains to be had for your staff in the right roles, and which then leads to satisfaction because the fact of the matter is that most of the stuff people use AI to do, stuff they didn't really like doing before. So they can get better at things
Yeah.
that they didn't like, probably weren't very good at, and do those faster. You can use it. You need to be thinking about, every place you've got a chat bot, every place you've got an automation. How can AI help you make that better? AI is not going to solve every problem, but in many of your processes, it's going to be able to help you get better and faster and more streamlined, better user experience, better customer experience. And at the same time, I think everybody needs to be looking at the defensive side of AI as well, right? How can I enable my security posture more effectively with AI as well? And then, like I said, how can I, make sure my employees understand how AI can be used against them as well? So those are sort of it's sort of motherhood and apple pie answer, right? Because it's a big question, but it's don't shy away from it. Go jump in and figure out how to use it. But I guess the other thing I would be clear about is, you've got data. You need to protect that data. And so be clear about what AI models you're using and where the data is, and how they're managed, right? And if you talk to the big three cloud providers, they will each tell you how they manage that data, depending upon whether you're in the public instance or a private instance. You may want to have an on-premise model for something, because once your data goes out in the public cloud in a public AI model, it's gone. Right? It's no more.
Yeah, you're never getting it back. Yeah. And I think that's a really good sort of side point is if you're not giving your users an AI to use, they're going to
Yes.
go
Yep.
use DeepSeek. It's free. And if not DeepSeek, one of the many others. And that's when you're guaranteed to have your data sharing. But I mean, even with the Chat GPT
Mhm.
Premium, there is an option in there that you have to check. And if you don't go and change that configuration in your profile, everything you put in there is used to
Right.
train the model. And that's what for the paid, even the $200 a
Mhm.
month version. So you do have to really know where it's at and make sure your employees know, hey, listen, yeah, we encourage you to use AI. Here's the resources you have
Mhm.
available, but you're not allowed to use any other
Right. Yeah.
AI.
And I think to your point, if you tell people not to, they're going to go use something that does give your data away.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, with DeepSeek being free, that's the one that they're most likely to go to. And the last thing we want people to do is go upload your, sensitive data into DeepSeek because it can create some graphs and do some
Right.
reasoning
Yeah.
for you.
Meanwhile, you just gave the Chinese government the keys to your kingdom. So yeah, not a good time.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. So, um, well, interesting, very interesting stuff. So I like to talk a lot about culture and how we can really mold that cultural shift within an organization. So I want to start with a question that I ask everybody. But say you only have one tool that you can use, carrot or stick, in your training program. Which do you choose and why?
Well, yeah. So if you only have one choice between the carrot and the stick, it's always the carrot. So I mean, sticks should be used pretty sparingly, no matter what. I'm not a big fan of them, and of course, I've worked for the government for a long time, where there aren't a lot of sticks anyway. Um, excuse me. But look, every employee is comes to work wanting to do a good job, right? People don't show up at work thinking, I'm going to do a lousy job today. And so, the carrot should be a way to help them be more successful. And sometimes people aren't in the right job. And your job is to help them find that right job and to get them in the right place where they can be successful. But everybody comes, they want to be successful. And your job as a leader is to provide that incentive, to provide the tools, the resources to help them be successful in their roles. And, that's always better done through the carrot than the stick, for sure.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Part of the reason I asked is with you being DOE, it's so high security. it's typically that's the side of things that I will hear the
Mhm.
stick
We
answer from.
Yeah.
So I was curious, but I agree. I think empathy is really how we
Mhm.
is one of the most important things inside of
Yeah.
any culture, whether it's trying to create a cyber culture, or just the general culture of the organization, because they're not unrelated.
Mhm.
And if we have a really bad cyber culture, that's going to impact the rest of the
Yep.
organization in
Very
a
much
negative
so.
way. Uh, and I think it happens often because well, you've been in tech a long time. What was the first thing that you learned in tech?
The first thing I learned in tech, well, that would be a long time ago. Well, I worked at Hewlett Packard as my first job. And
I learned it was always the
yeah,
user.
it's always the user's fault. Well, the first thing I learned in tech was the HP way, right? Which is about, working hard, being innovative, working as a team, treating people well, and making our customers happy. None of which have anything to do with technology, but all of which help create a better technology company. Um,
Yeah, those are all really good. I mean, great ways or methods
mhm,
to live by. So I like the
mhm.
HP way.
Yes.
That's
It is.
wise.
There was a reason that they ran a very successful company for a very long time. So, and it lost its way a little bit, but the two pieces of well, there are more than two pieces, but the two big pieces of HP Inc. and HPE, I think have found their way again. So it's good.
Yeah. So along those lines, what are the top, I don't know, maybe few tips of advice that you would give people on how to really craft a more security aware culture?
Yeah.
Because
No.
yeah, go ahead.
So yeah. So how to craft a more security aware culture. So number one is the classic think before you click, right? So having people people get in a hurry and they need to take a pause, look at who they got a message from, whether it's someone they know, whether they're expecting that infamous attachment or not. So that would be the number one thing, is to be aware of what is on your computer, in terms of your inbox, whether it's your computer inbox, whether it's your phone, whether it's picking up a voice call, reading a text, um, you know,
I've seen them in the mail with QR codes, like literally mailed with actual
or
gifts.
the thumb drives left on the ground in the parking lot that you can't say help yourself, but to put that in your computer. Stop, right? So the second thing is, if it's too good to be true, it is. Yeah, always,
Always,
right? That
always.
Saudi prince does not want to give you all his money. Your great grandmother did not have an inheritance that you never heard about before. Those absolutely don't buy it. And then I think the third one, along sort of the two together, right? There's always time to stop, right? You get people who get down the road, right? They click on something, they make the phone call to the people who are trying to get them. You can always hang up the phone. You can always disconnect the conversation. You can always, end the remote session. If when in doubt, no matter how far down the road you are with
Mhm.
something, stop and talk to somebody else. Take stock of the situation you've gotten yourself into, and talk to somebody else. And I think people get down the road on some of those, they get embarrassed, right? And they don't want to tell anybody. So
Well, I don't even think it's just embarrassment. There's the sunken
yeah,
cost fallacy that so when I was an ethical hacker, I ran some of the top red teams in the country, and I found that the harder I made it on people to run my malware, the more likely they were to run my malware. So the first time I would give you a URL, it'd be the wrong link, and you'd get a 404 and it wouldn't work. And I would make sure that there were a few missed steps along the way, because if by chance your antivirus or anything kicked in, as long as you had taken just even the slightest bit of action before that, you were now, I guess,
yeah,
committed and far less likely to say, "Oh, that's a red flag. I'm
yeah,
going to stop." And I think that telling people it's okay
Yeah.
to stop and making them aware of that bias that they have inside, just inherently inside of them really does help take and mitigate
Hmm.
some of those things where maybe they went too far and now, like you said, they're embarrassed or just, you know, feel like they've invested too much and so they
Right.
ignore the
Yeah,
red flag.
absolutely. Absolutely. Getting them to understand that it's okay to stop and, ignore the sunk cost, step away from the computer. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, there was a study out of South Florida that determined that there's this group in every organization that when they get that email from the Saudi prince or the long lost grandmother leaving them the inheritance, they will get suspicious of it. So they won't open it at home, but they'll forward it to their work email and they'll open it there because, we're so secure at work that you couldn't
Oh
possibly
my
get
gosh.
hacked.
I wish we were that secure at work. Oh, that's funny. I did not know that.
It's cute that they
Yeah,
have that much faith in the
it really
InfoSec
is. It
team.
really is. And I mean, our folks are really, really good. Um, but I can't save you from responding to the Saudi prince. So
Exactly.
yeah.
But I mean, no matter how perfect everything is, there's always that tiniest element of human error. And it doesn't have to be, the traditional
Hmm.
fish click. It could be using a
Right.
bad password, reusing the same password that's already
Hmm.
been compromised in different
Yep.
places, letting that person tailgate in behind you. I mean, picking up the USB thumb drive. That one actually was one of my favorite tricks when I would do ethical hacking. We went to those promotional marketing printers that'll, print the
Right.
custom USB drives for you. And instead of putting a logo on them, we just wrote in big, bold red letters, confidential on one side and sensitive information on the other side. And, we didn't and they were disposable because they cost us like 10
Right.
cents a piece, uh, and so we didn't have to go and do the bad USB or, get some hid device to get in, which was expensive, and we'd have to recover those. We just let curiosity get the best of them, and then put some document on there like 2025, layoff schedule, um,
Oh,
every
I
time.
bet. I bet. Yeah. Hmm. I, mhm.
HR was there for the
I do love that. Yeah, I do love
HR.
that vendors will still try and give you those at conferences. I'm like, no, is it, unless it's in a sealed manufacturer's package, there's no way I'm picking this thing up.
I must confess, we actually still give them out at conferences. But if you plug it in, there's a video about the dangers of plugging in
I
USB
love it.
drives on them.
That's great.
So we got humor out of the irony, but I do if there's not some video about the dangers, I wouldn't pick it up at a conference. Even with it, I probably wouldn't pick up my
Yes,
own.
good for you. Good for you.
Yep. Well, so we are running a little bit low. It's been an absolutely fabulous podcast. But before we do wrap, two
Okay.
questions. Number one, I know the DOE is huge in research, and it, if you can't answer, it's fine. But quantum computing
Hmm.
has just
Yep.
skyrocketed recently. How do you expect quantum to impact us over the course of the next, 3 to 5
Yeah.
years?
So, yeah, DOE's got at least 5 labs doing quantum work. Tremendous amount of interesting stuff. We've already seen a big project that Pacific Northwest National Lab and Microsoft did using AI and quantum, looking at battery materials that really sped the analysis time or reduced the analysis time up dramatically for selecting new battery materials. So I think we will see quantum at an industrial scale, in the near future. Everyone's not going to have a quantum computer, right? But they're going to be, essentially the quantum cloud out there. The nation state actors are going to have access to it in the next few years. So post quantum encryption, right, is urgent. So if you're not paying attention to it now, need to be paying attention to post quantum encryption because you need to secure your data. Certainly, the hoover it up now and decrypt later is real. Our adversaries are doing that. We can't do anything about the data they've already got, but we
Yep.
can reduce the amount of data they're going to be able to decrypt later, and it's critical.
Yep. Every major country
Yep.
is doing that right now, and they're getting their hands on. I mean, they're storing every bit of data they can get their hands on. And I mean, and we look at it. They started this almost 10 years ago. They started collecting this data, and when we look at all the vulnerabilities and encryption ciphers that we've had, all just from 10 years ago when it started to now, there has to be a large, I don't know what chunk, but a massive percentage of that's already been decrypted.
Yeah, I am sure.
And so yeah. Well, I agree. Quantum proof encryption. So, we are out of time, but before we leave, any tips that you would give just the listeners? It could be about anything at all. Just any words of advice you would have.
So I would say that the next near future might be a little chaotic, and to try and step away from the news cycle occasionally. Just
I've
Yeah.
had to. I said, okay, what is my sphere of influence? Because I would watch the news and just get mad. And I mean, I think it's designed to make us mad. And I was just like, I'm going to focus on my sphere of influence and watch financial news, and that's
the
it.
chaos is part of the point. So just find your happy place. Focus on what you can change in the world, and don't get too wrapped up in the news cycle. It doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. It doesn't matter what part of world news upsets you. Just take a step back and focus on focus on what you can change and what's important to you personally.
Exactly. Great advice. Thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolutely fabulous episode. For all of you joining remotely, thank you and have an amazing